joining us today. Welcome to Comox Valley Arts and our very first artist live stream with our practice series. Thanks for bearing with us as we get organized here, and I'm happy to introduce Bev Petersen, who will be joining us today to discuss the healing power of art. This project, Practice Inside the Creative Process, is a bit of a love child for us here at Comox Valley Arts. We are super excited about how it's coming together and rolling out, and we have so many things that we're going to share with you over the coming weeks. This project is funded by the Government of Canada's New Horizons for Seniors program, and we're very grateful for that. It's allowed us to do all kinds of interesting things, so do stay tuned over coming weeks, especially during this crazy time when so many of us are stuck at home with not a lot to do. And anyways, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Bev Petersen.
Take it away, Bev.
Hi. So many mixed feelings today about everything going on in the world, COVID-19, of course, and I'm wondering, should I even be here? Having a propensity for anxiety, all my fear triggers are kicking in. But I've learned a lot about fear over the decades. Learned from a great book by Susan Jeffers, MD, Feeling the Fear and Doing It Anyway. Because we all have fears, and I've learned that the only way to counteract fear is to push forward, to do something. There always has to be an action before, in any situation really, because that's where empowerment lies. So today, I'm feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Oh, but there is a good note. I forgot. I was going to mention that at the start. It is the first day of spring, and it hasn't been canceled. Before I start, I would like to read a quote. Scientific studies tell us that art heals by changing a person's body physiology and mental attitude, from one of stress to one of deep relaxation, from one of fear to one of creativity and inspiration. Art and music put a person in a different brainwave pattern, affect a person's autonomic nervous system, hormonal balance, and brain transmitters that changes the immune system and blood flow to all organs. I love it when science backs up what I have learned, and I know for sure art is my therapy. From a young age, I've used it to express what I could not verbalize or understand. I've used it to express emotions, feelings, to make statements. It's been instrumental in helping me heal emotional wounds. So what I've done is divided my journey with art and my life thus far into 7 segments. And each one of them, I have 7 foam boards. I'm low tech, and I'll just change them as I go into each area. And I know that the pictures, you probably won't be able to see that clearly, but it's representational of art that I've done that reflects that period, and it's just to really back up what I'm telling you. So first off, let's start with childhood. "75 years ago is when I've made my presence known. It was a frigid Manitoba November, a full moon. I was a firstborn, a Thursday's child. And my mother reminded me so often growing up of the pain and suffering that I had caused her. Took her, I was a breech birth is really why, and she never let me forget that she was in labor for 48 hours to bring me into the world. So this was a message that, I got fairly constantly. That really was not the thing that defined my childhood the most, though. That occurred when I was around 2. My father was a struggling farmer. He decided to leave my mother and me with his widowed mother while he went to Port Arthur, Ontario to earn money, and then he would be back in the spring. And then upon his return, in the early spring, that's when all hell broke loose. And that's the story that has haunted me for a long time, for many years actually. Apparently, excuse me, my mother ran down to the neighboring farm wearing nothing but a skimpy nightgown, barefoot, waking up the neighbors and telling them that my father had killed me. So they went running over there, and that was really not the case, or apparently what did happen, what I do know for sure. My mother had a breakdown, and what they called it in those days was manic depression. It's known as bipolar these days. And she was sent away for 9 months to a mental institution, and I was sent away too. I had to go live with an aunt for 9 months. And I found out after she also suffered from postpartum depression as well, and did so with subsequent births. So our household was a bit of, chaos, dysfunction, because I was a kid. I really didn't understand what was going on. Oh, my mother and I battled often with, all I saw was an angry, hostile woman. I did not understand, and she'd pick up anything around, a broom, a brush, you name it. And I did emphasize with her many years later, because in retrospect, I might act the same way, because I have memories of her pacing the floor late at night, waiting for my father to come home, and then just about killing him with a cast iron frying pan. So, but it took me many years before I could really know what was going on. And when I learned and could appreciate that she was the most beautiful, multi-talented person around that I've ever knew. Vivacious, fun-loving. She sang, she danced, she played the piano by ear, sewed. And although growing up in this household did influence and condition my life in many ways, it really, I have many happy memories as well. And so many of those living in small-town Manitoba, swimming in the creek, building rafts that never floated, riding my bike, skating under the stars, and constantly I was immersed in some sort of art form. As soon as I could barely walk or hold a crayon, I wanted to create something. Art was my favorite subject in school. And one of the things that I did was I spent hours and hours drawing and painting what I refer to as my calendar ladies. Each figure was wearing some sort of exotic costume that represented a calendar month. At the time, I really had no idea why I was painting or drawing these, but versions of these figures, they kept showing up throughout my life. I think we have one there too. But the one thing, as I got older, that I knew for sure, I needed to flee small-town Manitoba. I was, most of my life was either in fight or flee, and I chose flee. When I left home at 17, childhood and art faded to black. So the next period of my life, I call it amnesia. The next 21 years, it's like I did have amnesia. I really didn't talk a lot about my family or the town I came from. I really said not a lot. But you can't hide everything, or you can't suppress it, I learned, because that's when the first of many nightmares that haunted me all my life began. The frequency of the nightmares has diminished, especially in the last 20 years, due in part to embracing art. But back in that time, a time of the 60s, a time of music, parties, rebellion, who really had time to dwell on nightmares or art? So I spent a year in Toronto enjoying the music scene and the many clubs on Yonge Street. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the music and what was going on in those days, but Ronnie Hawkins, the Hawk's Nest, a lot of little jazz clubs, and then there was Yorkville. When I returned to Winnipeg after a year, well, the dancing resumed on the airbase at Winnipeg, CFB, where I met my first husband in 1969. And I felt like I'd found a normal family at last. And you know, there was a bonus too in being married. I could finally give up my maiden name. I'm telling the whole world now, it was chicken. Yes, it really was. I kid you not. But you know, embraced in a family again, I started to paint. And the urge was so strong, and I went to a few classes. I painted, gave paintings away, and the urge was so strong to keep doing this until my mother-in-law died when she was 54. Well, that shattered me, because it was just like losing my mother to mental illness. I was losing another mother again. And so many memories of evenings spent outside on a little patio, telling stories with this lovely woman who I had grown to love. Shortly after this, we relocated to Saskatoon. That was 2 years I spent there, then Edmonton. I always found work and still was able to dabble a little in art. In Edmonton, I decided to further my education in the accounting and business field. I loved going back to school and sopped up everything like a sponge. I worked during the day and studied at night. I figured someone in the marriage had to be the responsible one. And there actually is a better word to describe that. Perhaps the better word is enabler or codependent. My husband was an alcoholic, and I couldn't fix him as much as I tried. After 9 years, we divorced. I did keep in touch with him shortly after because I was concerned, and got my education in AA. I would go with him to his meetings, so I learned a lot about that, codependency. But time passed, and a short time, well, it wasn't a short time, but a time after that, then along came the Australian I met in 1980, who was to be a major influence in my life for the next 11 years. And that was Fantasy Island. In 1983, Jeff and I moved to Salt Spring Island, or Fantasy Island. I fell in love with the West Coast. That was really my introduction to it. Salt Spring is so well known for its arts and culture. I was influenced by so many of the artists and the gallery owners. It left a lasting impression on me. I attended a multitude of workshops at that time, and then I obtained my real estate license and grew professionally as well as personally. We bought a sailboat. We discovered and camped on many of the nearby islands with Boo, my big gorgeous black standard poodle. We bought a house on a hillside overlooking Ganges Harbor with stunning panoramic views of Mount Baker. By this time, I had gained a lot of confidence, and I was able to take a journey inward to the past I'd been running from for so long. Life was good. Christmas 1990 was spent in Australia. When we returned a month later in January, well, I was blindsided. Jeff informed me his business that I had virtually helped set up was in trouble. We remortgaged, and in less than a month, he was gone. Vamoose, over the hill. What hurt the most was the betrayal of my best friend, who he had left me for. Well, what did I do? Got into flight mode again. I cut my losses, bottom out, saddled with debt and a slowing of the real estate market, eventually, which would lead to an unraveling of pretty much everything. My home, my community, boo dog, livelihood, and eventual bankruptcy. As I fled Fantasy Island in 1992 to live with his sister in Winnipeg. And so it was back to Manitoba for a year until I finally came to my senses and headed back west. I was so angry, I was depressed, and I so missed the West Coast. It was 1993 when I discovered Courtney, and I drove into Courtney, alone, broke and broken. And I was captivated by the magnificent glacier. It riveted, excuse me, and anchored me, and I knew I had found my home. But like a hamster in a wheel, I worked at more jobs than I can recall. From a fly-in fishing camp, cleaning houses, packing and shipping salal, and a welcome wagon representative, to name a few. In spite of it all, I declared bankruptcy. This culminated in my car being towed away. That was like the lowest point in my life, one of the lowest points. Because as someone came to tow it away, I was living in a dingy little cabin, peering through the window. And my car was the last thing I had, and it was gone. Well, I dropped down on the floor and I cried until I thought I'd never stop. But life went on. 1997, I was accepted into a wonderful program, Working Opportunities for Women, and WOW program for short. Great name for it. There was 14 of us, all ranging in age from early 20s to 50s, and I met this lovely young woman in this group, and I thought to myself, if I had ever had a daughter, I would have wanted her to be just like Naomi. And a year later, I walked into a little photo shop was on Cliff, with a welcome wagon basket to present to the new manager. We'll be celebrating our 18th wedding anniversary this year. Call this period Phoenix Rising. Hans and I had much more in common besides his daughter. He too had encountered financial setbacks and loss, but together we bought a little house in 2001 and married in 2002. A lot of time and energy went into renovating our home, but art kept calling really, really strongly now. The urge to create just could not be ignored. I painted street banners, coordinated art in the park one year, worked at a project creating door harps out of recycled cedar, and I taught art to children at the Boys and Girls Club. I completed an art program also. It was a pretty comprehensive program, and I figured, well, I had to have something that said I could do art, and maybe it would prove to myself that, gee, maybe I could be an artist, maybe I was. And then my father died in 2004, my mother the following year, and it was like the floodgates just opened. I wrote and I painted, I wrote, and sometimes the words inspired the images, and other times the images inspired the words. I painted weekly with a neighbor, an accomplished artist, and she encouraged my progress. And this prompted me to buy yet another easel. Do you know how many easels I've had in my life? Every time I would get the creative urge, well, I'd have to get a beautiful new easel, and every time I dried up, well, I gave it away. What it finally took to exhibit, though, was my husband's retirement and his creative adventures. He entered Originals Art Show, and I put up a few paintings. On the last day, oh my God, I was getting tired of this. The storms, the sky was black, the wind was blowing, and I thought, oh my God, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't do this. I need a sign. Please give me some kind of a sign. And just before closing, someone came rushing up to me, handed me cash. He bought a painting, and it was ironically called Rejection. That was my sign. And not long after that event, a version of my calendar ladies that I'd mentioned previously spontaneously came to life. How that happened, I was sitting at home on a small brick patio overlooking a little fish pond that we have, really relaxed, a sunny day, and then I caught a glimpse, a flash of orange from my left eye. And it was a daylily, but as I stared at it, it transmuted. She was a dancer. She was wearing beautiful flowy orange robes, and 9 other flowers came into sharp focus just like that, each one embodying a female figure, and they all had a message of love and healing. So my quick sketches morphed into 10 acrylic paintings, and then after that, had to start a website. And we plan to have our own show the following year at Pearl Ellis Gallery. As we entered 2015, I was feeling grateful for quite a few things. I had steady part-time income. I'd been working at the same place for 8 years, really good wage, and it did allow me to develop as an artist. And Hans was retired by this time, and I was pretty happy with that. And then boom, I was laid off. I didn't expect that, and it came as a bit of a shock. So what did I do? Well, I got really busy again. Firstly, I threw a giant party in our backyard celebrating new beginnings, and no one was allowed to call this a retirement party. I prepared all the food as a sort of test run for the art show we'd be having later, and I just kept on running. 2016 got even busier. Lots of exhibits, a couple of commissions, painting like a mad woman, late hours into the evening so I could have enough inventory. Towards the end of the year, it was getting crazier. Hans had to leave the country to take care of an ailing relative in Amsterdam. While he was gone, I organized another gala party, his 80th birthday party. I really wasn't listening to the whispers, the nudges, gentle at first. I needed the proverbial 2x4 over the head. So beginning of 2017, I was immobilized by a series of events. Cataract surgery, both eyes. I couldn't really do too much, and I'm really physical and active. I couldn't lift heavy objects, and then it was a horrible snowstorm. Lots of snow everywhere. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't help with the shoveling. Then I got a nasty flu bug, and I really never caught the flu or a cold or anything, and it was horrible. I thought I was going to die. I lost a lot of weight. And I also thought I had every dread disease in the book. And what turned out, I had an anxiety disorder. And I was put on antidepressants. And in a way, that was a relief. I needed to hear that, I think. And it's like, yeah, that made sense. I mean, after all, coming from a house with mental illness when I was a young child, I'd been running most of my life in some form or other. And now I was like empty, just totally empty. Only 2 paintings emerged during this time, and I had a compulsion to paint larger than usual. And the first one, probably can't see it there, but it's a person leaping out of the brambles and just being free. And that was, what did I call that? Dancing in the Light, which represented breaking loose from the past. And then I destroyed it. I painted over it, so maybe it's not really destroyed, but the fog the fog has lifted, emerged from that destruction. And this one is at the Vancouver Island's Visitor Center, which we were originally supposed to be in today. But I didn't paint much in 2018 at all. I did show paintings the odd time, but what I was doing in that year, I focused more on other passions, gardening, like vegetable gardening, growing things, flowers, little landscaping here and there, and fitness, and mental health, and community, and volunteer work. And the volunteer work is with the Justice Center. I sit on a panel that when we have conferences, and it's to restore justice to people, and it's a wonderful process. And then 2019, there became a renewal of painting, and most of the work that is behind me came from that time. And it changed, and I realized that it changed to reflect how I had changed. And before the end of the year, it took me 4 months, I got off antidepressants. And my doctor was so wonderful. She was very supportive, and she kept saying, whatever you're doing, don't stop, just keep doing it. And then I also decided that I think I'm an artist after all. Oh, and then we get to Power of Now. I love Power of Now. I used to view my life as a jigsaw puzzle, half the pieces missing, but now I see it more like a tumbling kaleidoscope. And I painted a lot of things like that, bits and pieces and colors. I understand the connectivity that has brought me to now. Art has been instrumental in healing the past, and it's given me a voice. It's gratifying to know that I do have art in homes across Canada. And what's really important, I feel a sense of belonging within the arts community and the Comox Valley as a whole. It's where I belong, it's where I found my tribe. And I recognize that art is an integral part of my being. I'm not driven by anything external. As long as I can sell a painting or two so I can buy more supplies and keep developing as an artist, show my work, be part of our vibrant arts community, I'm happy. I'm just following my bliss and enjoying the journey thus far. So I think that pretty much sums everything up, but I'd like to finish with a quote, and I love this quote by L.R. Nost. Life is amazing, and then it's awful, and then it's amazing again. And in between the amazing and awful, it's ordinary and mundane and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and exhale during the ordinary. That's just living, heartbreaking, soul-healing, amazing, awful, ordinary life. And it's breathtakingly beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much today, Bev. That was fantastic. It was great to hear all your stories and understand just exactly how one can transition from what might come across to many as hard life and come out the other side, healed or healing, and continuing to be expressing your creative power and your joy for life and all the things that are so great about being here, even after having a not so great beginning. So thank you very much for sharing that. And thank you all for joining us. We look forward to bringing you some more of these, and hopefully we won't have too many technical glitches along the way in future. And that's all. If you would like to join us again, do be sure to like our page, follow us on Instagram, and stay tuned. Join our mailing list as well. You can sign up for that at comoxvalleyarts.com. And that is all. You can find us all over the place, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much for joining us. Bye-bye.